Why trash companies quietly make billions. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every waste collection company in your city has stopped operating. Not for a month, not for a week, just 3 days. At first, very little would seem different. People would leave for work. Cafes would open their doors. Traffic would move through the streets as usual, but by the second day, something would begin to change. Trash bins would overflow. Back alleys would fill with waste. Businesses would struggle to manage growing piles of garbage. And by the third day, an uncomfortable reality would become impossible to ignore. Modern civilization is built on systems most people never think about. We admire skyscrapers, technology companies, luxury brands, and financial empires. Yet many of the industries that truly keep society functioning operate almost entirely outside public attention. One of the most powerful is the business of waste. Every day, millions of tons of garbage quietly disappear from homes, offices, restaurants, hospitals, factories, and cities around the world. Most people never stop to ask where it goes. Even fewer ask who profits from moving it. Yet behind every trash bag thrown away is a vast industrial network worth billions of dollars. A network of trucks, landfills, contracts, logistics systems, and infrastructure quietly shaping modern life. This is the story of how garbage became one of the most profitable businesses in civilization, and why some of the most successful companies in the world make their fortunes from the things everyone else wants to forget. There is something unusual about garbage. Unlike most products in modern society, its entire purpose is to disappear. When people buy a new phone, they think about the company that made it. When they drive a car, they recognize the brand. When they wear expensive clothing, they often display the logo with pride. But when they throw something away, the relationship ends. The object vanishes from attention, and so does the industry responsible for removing it. This creates a fascinating psychological blind spot. Human beings are naturally drawn toward things they admire. We notice wealth. We notice beauty. We notice innovation, but we rarely pay attention to the systems dealing with waste, decay, and disposal. In many ways, garbage exists outside the boundaries of everyday thought. Once something enters a trash bin, it becomes mentally invisible. Yet this invisibility creates an interesting opportunity. Because while most people ignore waste, someone still has to manage it. Someone has to collect it. Someone has to transport it. Someone has to store it. And someone has to build the infrastructure capable of handling millions of tons of unwanted material every year. The result is an industry hidden in plain sight. An industry so essential that society cannot function without it, and yet so overlooked that many people know almost nothing about how it works. The paradox is simple. The more invisible the service becomes, the easier it is to underestimate its value. And few services are more invisible than waste management. Every morning before most cities wake up, fleets of trucks begin moving through neighborhoods. Workers collect thousands of containers. Routes are optimized with military-like precision. Schedules are carefully maintained. The operation repeats day after day, year after year, so consistently that most people never notice it at all. And that is exactly what makes it powerful. Most people imagine garbage collection as a relatively simple process. A truck arrives. The trash is collected. The trash disappears. But the reality is far more complex. In truth, modern waste management is one of the largest logistical systems ever created. Every city rests on an invisible network designed to move enormous volumes of waste with remarkable efficiency. The journey begins at homes, apartment buildings, restaurants, offices, hospitals, factories, and construction sites. From there, waste collection vehicles gather material from thousands of locations every day, but the trucks themselves are only the first step. In many cases, garbage is transported to facilities known as transfer stations. These facilities act as giant logistical hubs. Waste arrives from numerous collection routes and is consolidated into much larger transport systems capable of moving massive volumes over long distances. From there, the material may travel to landfills, recycling centers, waste-to-energy facilities, or specialized processing plants. Each destination requires its own infrastructure, its own equipment, its own workforce, and its own complex regulatory systems. Landfills alone represent extraordinary engineering projects. Far from being simple holes in the ground, modern landfills are highly controlled environments designed to manage environmental risks, monitor emissions, handle drainage systems, and operate safely for decades. Building and maintaining such facilities requires enormous investment. The same is true for recycling plants, sorting facilities, transportation fleets, and processing centers. Beneath the surface of every modern city exists an industrial ecosystem most people never see. An ecosystem quietly working every hour of every day. Because unlike many industries, waste management cannot pause. People produce garbage during economic booms. People produce garbage during recessions. People produce garbage during holidays, crises, and ordinary days alike. The flow never truly stops. And because the flow never stops, the infrastructure supporting it becomes one of the most reliable systems in modern civilization. A hidden machine operating beneath society itself, quietly moving mountains of waste while most of the world remains completely unaware of its existence. For most of human history, waste was a local problem. People produced relatively little garbage. Food scraps decomposed naturally. Broken tools were repaired rather than replaced. Possessions were often used until they could no longer serve a purpose. The amount of waste generated by a typical household was small compared to today's standards. But as cities grew, everything changed. During the 19th century, industrialization transformed human civilization. Factories expanded. Urban populations exploded. Consumer goods became more common. And with every new product came something else. Waste. Suddenly, cities faced a challenge they had never encountered on such a scale: mountains of garbage. In rapidly growing urban centers, waste accumulated in streets, alleys, rivers, and vacant land. Public health crises became increasingly common. Disease spread more easily. Living conditions deteriorated. The problem could no longer be ignored. What began as a sanitation issue slowly evolved into an economic opportunity. Governments needed solutions. Cities needed infrastructure. Businesses saw potential. The collection and disposal of waste became professionalized. Specialized companies emerged. Equipment improved. Transportation networks expanded. Over time, an entirely new industry was born. Then came another transformation: consumer culture. As economies developed throughout the 20th century, societies shifted toward mass consumption. Products became cheaper to manufacture. Packaging became more elaborate. Disposable items became common. Convenience became a selling point. The result was predictable. More products entering homes meant more products leaving homes. And every discarded item created demand for waste management services. The industry was no longer simply removing garbage. It was supporting the very structure of modern consumer civilization. The more society consumed, the larger the industry became. Every online order, every fast food meal, every shipping box, every replacement appliance, every discarded piece of furniture, all eventually became part of the same economic system. A system built around managing the consequences of consumption. And as consumption expanded across the world, so did the value of the businesses responsible for handling what society left behind. Garbage was no longer just waste. It had become a permanent feature of modern economics. Most people assume waste management is a highly competitive industry. After all, collecting trash does not appear particularly complicated. Buy some trucks, hire some workers, collect garbage. But beneath the surface lies a reality that is far more difficult. Waste management is one of the most protected industries in modern civilization. The reason begins with infrastructure. Building a landfill is extraordinarily expensive. Finding suitable land is difficult. Obtaining permits can take years. Environmental regulations are extensive. Community opposition is often fierce. Political approval can be unpredictable. Even when all those obstacles are overcome, construction costs can be enormous. The result is a significant barrier to entry. Very few companies possess the resources necessary to build and operate large-scale waste facilities. And those that do often gain substantial advantages. Because controlling disposal infrastructure means controlling access. Every truck eventually needs somewhere to unload its waste. Every city requires facilities capable of handling enormous volumes of garbage. Without those facilities, collection becomes impossible. This creates a powerful economic position. In many regions, a small number of companies own the critical infrastructure that keeps waste moving. Landfills, transfer stations, processing facilities, transportation networks. Together, these assets form what economists sometimes call a moat, a protective barrier surrounding a business. The larger the infrastructure network becomes, the more difficult it is for competitors to challenge it. Government contracts add another layer of stability. Municipalities often sign long-term agreements for waste collection and disposal services. These contracts can last for years, sometimes decades. For the companies involved, this creates predictable streams of revenue. For competitors, it creates another obstacle. The result is an industry where scale matters enormously, an industry where infrastructure becomes power, and where ownership of seemingly unremarkable assets can generate extraordinary economic value. Most people never notice these systems, but behind the ordinary act of taking out the trash exists a highly strategic business landscape, one built on logistics, regulation, infrastructure, and long-term control. There is a question many investors ask before putting money into a business. What happens during a recession? Some industries struggle immediately. Luxury spending declines. Travel slows. Consumer demand weakens. Businesses postpone expansion plans. Revenue becomes uncertain. But garbage behaves differently. People may reduce spending. They may delay purchases. They may become more cautious. Yet they continue producing waste. Households still generate trash. Restaurants still discard food. Hospitals still dispose of medical materials. Businesses still create waste streams. The flow never truly disappears. This gives waste management companies something investors value deeply: predictability. Predictability is often more valuable than rapid growth. A business that generates consistent revenue year after year can become extremely attractive, especially when the service it provides is essential. Waste collection is not optional. Modern cities cannot function without it. Governments cannot simply pause it. Communities cannot ignore it. The service must continue. This creates a rare combination: reliable demand, long-term contracts, critical infrastructure, and relatively limited competition. Together, these characteristics make the industry remarkably resilient. But there is another reason investors pay attention: scale. As cities expand and populations grow, waste volumes often increase. Economic activity creates consumption. Consumption creates waste. Waste creates demand for infrastructure. And demand for infrastructure creates opportunities for businesses already positioned within the system. Over time, some waste management companies transformed from simple collection services into enormous infrastructure operators. They acquired landfills, built processing facilities, expanded transportation networks, integrated recycling operations, developed energy recovery projects. The business evolved far beyond collecting garbage. It became a sophisticated infrastructure enterprise. And that is why many investors no longer see waste as something unpleasant. They see something else entirely: a system of recurring demand, protected assets, long-term cash flow, and one of the most reliable business models modern civilization has ever succeeded. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the waste industry is not economic. It is psychological, because garbage reveals something unusual about human behavior. Human beings are remarkably skilled at separating themselves from the consequences of their consumption. We enjoy purchasing products. We enjoy convenience. We enjoy receiving packages, upgrading devices, replacing old possessions, and consuming new experiences. But we rarely think about what happens afterward. The moment an item enters a trash bin, it often disappears from our awareness. Psychologists sometimes refer to this tendency as cognitive distancing. People naturally create mental boundaries between themselves and uncomfortable realities. And few realities are more uncomfortable than waste. Garbage reminds us of excess. It reminds us of consumption. It reminds us that every object we own will eventually become something discarded. So society develops a simple solution. We make waste invisible. We place bins behind buildings. We move landfills away from cities. We schedule collection trucks before sunrise. We hide the entire system from view. The cleaner and more efficient the system becomes, the less people think about it. Yet our garbage tells a story. Every discarded object reveals something about how we live, what we value, what we waste, what we replace, and what we leave behind. In many ways, trash is one of the most honest records of human civilization. It exposes habits that advertising never shows, behaviors that social media rarely reveals, and patterns of consumption that shape the modern world. The waste industry exists because civilization creates waste. And the scale of that industry reflects the scale of human consumption itself. For decades, waste management followed a relatively simple model: collect, transport, dispose. But the future may look very different, because many companies are beginning to see garbage not as a problem, but as a resource. Around the world, new technologies are transforming how waste is handled. Advanced sorting systems now use artificial intelligence to identify materials with extraordinary precision. Automated facilities can process enormous volumes of recyclables faster than human workers. Waste-to-energy plants convert certain forms of garbage into electricity. Organic waste can be transformed into fuel, compost, and industrial materials. Even landfills themselves are becoming valuable assets. Some facilities capture methane gas produced by decomposing waste and convert it into energy. What was once considered worthless is increasingly viewed as an economic opportunity. This shift reflects a larger change in thinking. The traditional economy follows a linear model. Resources are extracted, products are manufactured, goods are consumed, waste is discarded, But a growing number of governments and businesses are exploring a different approach. The circular economy, an economic system designed to keep materials in use for as long as possible. In this model, waste becomes a resource rather than an endpoint. The implications are significant. As populations continue growing and resources become increasingly valuable, the ability to recover materials from waste may become one of the defining industries of the future. The garbage of one generation could become the raw material of the next, and the companies positioned within this transition may discover opportunities far greater than simple waste collection. The future of garbage may not be about disposal. It may be about recovery, transformation, and value creation. Most people never think about the systems that quietly support their everyday lives. But those hidden systems often shape civilization far more than the things that receive attention. If you enjoy exploring the invisible industries, psychological forces, and economic structures operating beneath the surface of modern society, consider subscribing to Omni. Because behind every ordinary object, every industry, and every institution, there is usually a hidden system waiting to be understood. And there are many more stories still to uncover. The most powerful systems are rarely the most visible. They do not demand attention. They do not dominate headlines. And they are often overlooked precisely because they work so well. Every day, millions of people place a bag outside their homes and forget about it. Yet that simple act activates one of the largest logistical networks on Earth. A network of workers, trucks, facilities, infrastructure, contracts, and businesses operating quietly in the background. Not glamorous, not celebrated, but essential. Because civilization is not sustained only by the systems people admire. It is sustained by the systems people rarely notice. And perhaps that is the true lesson of the waste industry. The hidden systems are often the ones that matter most. The world is often shaped by the systems people rarely notice.